All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you from all over the world, people tuning in to welcome. And breaking into private equity is our subject of this evening. We're super excited to have you all here, and we're really, really excited about the panelists that we've pulled together who are going to share their expertise, their knowledge with us, and everything they have experienced in their own recruiting processes and everything that they want to share with all of you tonight. So before we get started, we can just take a quick minute. I'd love for everyone to scan the QR code on the right there on the screen. We do a ton of free events. We offer discount codes. We have a newsletter, and we want you to stay in the loop for those things. So make sure to scan and sign up for Leland. Dalen will also go ahead and drop the link in the chat. It's free to create an account, and we just want to have your email information so that we can continue inviting you to the free events we do, all the things that we have to offer for free for our community. So make sure to sign up, and we will keep you in the loop. We will move forward, but the link is in the chat. All right, in terms of event logistics, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Sometimes if our panelists have a down moment, they might be able to answer, but if you don't get your question answered today, we will make sure to follow up or keep you in the loop for future events that might be helpful to the questions you have come with today. Please be respectful. Again, we might not have time to answer everyone's questions. There's a lot of you here live tonight. So please be respectful and supportive, and know that everyone is also on this crazy wild ride of PE recruiting, which is extremely competitive, and we want to be supportive to one another. And then finally, goes without saying, one more plug, make sure to sign up for Leland. Signing up is just going to help you get all the access you need, the resources to apply and land your dream job. So we hope you take a minute to do that. It's a very quick little survey you fill out, and then you can stay in the loop. A couple things for our agenda today. We will do a quick Leland overview just to tell you who we are, what our mission is here at Leland, what it is that we do. And then we will do a quick PE recruiting overview, which was written by a private equity senior associate, just spilling out her tips and tricks. And then we will dive into the bulk of the conversation, which will be our expert panel. All of our panelists, which I'm super excited for you to meet tonight, are amazing at what they do, and they've come prepared with insight and top tips to share with you. So we really want to make sure to spend the majority of the conversation on hearing from them. And then we'll wrap up, give you some next steps, give a round of applause to our panelists, and we'll let you out for this evening. So with that, let's dive right in. First, you'll see here, Dalen, she is going to be dropping things in the chat, answering questions as they come in. I'm Erica. I'm the head of experience at Leland. So I have the great fortune of running all of our events. I've probably seen you around, and I hope to see you in the future. And then John, our CEO, might bop in as well. But the real stars of the show tonight are our expert panelists, and I'm really excited for you to hear from each of them, hear what they have to say, and for all that they're going to share this evening. Let me just say, as you can imagine, they're all very, very busy in their professions, in school. Some are even across the world. And so we just want to be super grateful and appreciative for the time and the expertise they're going to be sharing with us tonight. So let's do Philip, and then Matt, and then Asha, and then we will go from there. Take it away.
Thanks, Erica. Hello, everyone. My name is Philip. I'm currently sitting in Philadelphia as a second-year MBA candidate at Wharton. But a little more detail on me. I'm a dad of two. I'm born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. Attended BYU and studied finance before starting my career in investment banking. I moved to New York, worked in the M&A group at Credit Suisse for 2 years before working for 2 additional years at Leland Capital in New York, where I was a generalist associate. I'm really excited to be here with the other panel members and to hopefully share some advice and personal anecdotes that will be helpful as you consider or begin preparing to recruit for private equity.
Great, thanks, Philip. My name is Matt Jenkins. I'm currently an associate at Bain Capital in their Tech Opportunities Fund. It's a growth equity fund within Bain Capital that's relatively new. And within that fund, I focus mostly on our infrastructure and cybersecurity strategy. Prior to joining Bain Capital, where I've been for a little over a year, I was at Bain and Company in Dallas, Texas, where I spent a little over 20 months in their private equity group doing due diligence for large cap private equity buyouts. Prior to that, I was also at BYU, where I studied economics and minored in business strategy, originally from Virginia, and also a dad of two. So kudos, hats off to you, Philip. So yeah, I'll pass it over to our next panelist.
Take it away, Asha.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Asha Tanwar. I am from London, grew up here, and then moved to the US in 2019, just in time for COVID. Before I moved, I spent 4 years at JP Morgan in the tech M&A team, and then moved across to the US to start my MBA. I went to Harvard Business School, graduated, and then made the switch to private equity, where I spent 2 years in tech PE at Apex Partners in New York. And then now I offer coaching on the Leland platform and help people like you and the next generation break into private equity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As you can all see, incredible panelists from the best of the best companies, backgrounds, banks, business schools, all the above. So really honored to have them here with us and excited to spend the majority of our conversation this evening learning from each of them. Thanks all in advance and excited to hear from you. Now we want to hear real quick from our audience. Where are you dialing in from? Where are you working, studying? I'm sure there's a wide spectrum of people in banking right now, maybe in your undergraduate, maybe in grad school. Drop it in the chat. Don't be shy. We just love to get to know our audience and know who we're speaking with this evening. So feel free to take it away. I'm happy to start us off. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Fun to see. Lots of representation. Sweet. All right, keep it coming. This is great. So fun to see where everyone's dialing in from. Very smart bunch we have this evening, and excited to get to know you as you use Leland and as we interact in other community events. All right, now let's dive into our Leland overview. What we do here at Leland. Our goal is to build the one-stop shop for each of you to reach your most ambitious goals. So through one-on-one coaching, small group classes, and a ton of community initiatives, as I've mentioned tonight, we want to help you on this path. So for example, if you're here for private equity specifically, we are here to help. We want to help you land your dream job. If you're looking for business school advising, if you're, maybe interested in breaking into investment banking first before you go into private equity or venture or growth equity, whatever it may be, we have the platform to help you get there. Our coaches are incredible. They're trained, they're experts, they've been in your shoes, and they want to help you reach whatever it is that you're hoping to achieve. And the most fun part is that it is actually working. I think this is one of my favorite slides to share because it's just a little sample of the many people that are reaching their goals on the platform. So you can see here we have people reaching business school goals, getting into top private equity funds like the Carlyle Group, several of the funds that are represented here tonight on our panel, top grad school programs, undergrad programs, PM roles, you name it, we've helped someone get there, and we really want to help you too. We know sometimes when you're in this journey, it just seems so overwhelming. These are really competitive paths that each of you are on, and we want to help be in your corner and help you make this process a lot less, mysterious and a lot more seamless, and just know that you have a whole tribe and army in your corner. So our goal is to help you reach your goals, and we do so through the power of coaching and really, really incredible mentorship. So make sure if you haven't already to sign up for Leland, because we want to help you and we want you to be one of the amazing results we show here on this slide next time. So tactically speaking, to translate that, like how can we actually help? Wherever you're at in the process, we have a coach to help you. So if that's early stage networking, reaching out, coffee chats, those initial conversations, we can help you prep for those, all the way to, the incredibly difficult technical interviews that you will go through. We can also help prepare you for those as well. So wherever you're at in the process, whatever it is that you're looking for, if it's comprehensive, if it's one step of this journey, please reach out. We're here to help, and we'll find you the perfect coach based on your background, your budget, your goals, and whatever it is that you're trying to achieve all through our platform. So that's just a quick little overview of who we are. And now let's dive into why we're all here tonight, which is private equity and breaking into this industry. So I don't want to go too heavily deep into this information, just given that our panelists are going to share a lot, but I think it helps us kind of level set, know where we're coming from, what we're going to discuss tonight. Again, these were created by private equity associates themselves. So this is, the best of the best information, and we want to share it with you. And then we're going to dive into hearing from our panelists. So a couple things to note about the PE recruiting process. There's the formal headhunters, actual like heads down recruiting, interviewing, all of that, as well as the informal coffee chats, initial conversations, and things like that. So our panelists will touch on both of these things this evening. Next, something to call out is on-cycle and off-cycle recruiting. I'm sure if you're going through like a private equity or consulting or banking role, that's usually where you're at. Whereas off-cycle can be for different stages. Maybe you're coming from undergrad and going straight to an analyst program, or you're lateraling over, or firms recruit on their own timeline. There are going to be different times, and you just want to be aware of what those look like. So each of our panelists tonight will talk about their own individual journeys and kind of what that looks like. But I think it's important to note that, depending on where you're applying, where you're coming from, there might be different cycles that you'll participate in. And then there's also, private equity is a very broad statement. There's different sizes of the funds, geographical locations, industries, and different sectors that you could participate in, as well as the investment strategy of the fund. So again, our panelists can speak to these things as they relate to their respective firms, and just something to note as you think of what it looks like to break in. And we have a lot of questions that are very specific to like, how do you even think through these things? You want to get into private equity, like how do you even decide where to apply, where to, spend your time connecting and all of that. So we'll make sure that's covered in our panel today. And then a couple general tips. Again, these are from many coaches that we've chatted with, and we want to kind of make sure you leave knowing how to stand out. So let's go through these really quickly, and then the rest of the tips, and probably these things will be really drilled into your head by the end of the night from our panelists. So obviously, one, being a strong presence. There are very few spots at private equity funds, and so they want to pick the best of the best. So demonstrating your genuine interest and presenting yourself in the best possible ways. Next is acing your technicals, so being really strong at those technical tests. Knowing the firm, so doing your research, your due diligence really early on. And then finally, just knowing the difference between each of these firms in which you're going to be applying. And then we're going to share a ton more tips tonight. This is just kind of level set. So let's dive in to why we're all here to hear from our amazing panelists. All right, to kick things off, I think this is really important for everyone to understand. So I'm going to have each of the panelists start by telling us about their own personal PE recruitment journey. Let's go Matt, Phil, and then Asha, if you want to bring us home.
Sure. So I was at Bain and Company, like I said, and I had been doing the private equity group for some time. It was actually the only thing that I did at Bain and Company since I had started, and was really enjoying it. But I wasn't really positive that I wanted to dive into private equity. It wasn't like my reason for going into consulting. Was really just going in to explore. And so once kind of the headhunters started reaching out, I was curious to learn more, and so I took those meetings more as like, how can I learn, and try to discover a couple of those things that we were talking about, like, well, one, am I even interested in this? But if I were, like, what would be the kind of criteria that I would place on something that was interesting to me? And so as I took a couple of those calls and started getting a little more interested, I started setting up what those criteria were. And I kind of decided, like, look, I love what I'm doing at Bain & Co. I could see myself staying here. So if I'm going to leave for something, it's going to be a very narrow set of opportunities within these bands. And so I thought about geography, where I wanted to be, which was important because at that time, had a family, and so it would be moving us across the country somewhere. I had thought about size of fund. I wanted to be at a place that could do kind of large scale majority transactions, but also still had room to grow. I was pretty agnostic to the type of investing. But for me, something that was like in terms of like whether it was technology or like infrastructure, building products, chemicals, like I don't know. I thought I could get interested in any of that stuff. And so that wasn't as important to me. I think what was really important to me as a consultant was I wanted to go to a place that had a history of hiring consultants. Some place that didn't just, accept consultants, but want bankers, but valued the skill set that I would bring in and knew how to kind of transition a consultant into an investor. And so I picked a couple of firms, Bain Capital being one of them, that I thought I could be really excited about because of their history of hiring consultants. And then for me, the on-cycle process kind of kicked off. I think it always kicks off earlier than what most people expected, or I'd be interested in Asha and Philip's experience. But kicked off very early. And so I started getting a flood of emails at like 7 p.m. one night randomly. And at that point, when I started getting all the emails, I was like, maybe I am more interested in broader opportunities than what I had said. But because I hadn't really prepared for those, I actually didn't know how to LBO model or do an LBO before. I hadn't really spent a lot of time with the finance technicals. And so like I went into those coffee chats where I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to have a coffee chat. And then they were like, cool, before the coffee chat, like here's the 2-hour modeling test. And I was like, whoa. So then I kind of shut down and was like, okay, maybe I don't want to do private equity. And then luckily, right after that, an interview for Bain Capital came through, which I knew was, we can talk more about this if people are interested, but which does not include any kind of LBO modeling. It's more like a case, more like a consulting case study with kind of a little more of a finance spin to it. And so I had kind of 2 interviews that next day, one with the private equity fund and one with the tech opportunities group. And it was really just in one day. So I interviewed with one at 6 a.m. I think maybe other people here will tell you that the on-cycle interview times can be quite varied and exotic, or I don't know, can be at any time of the day or night. But I interviewed at 6 a.m. Then I had another interview at 10 a.m. And then kind of 2 hours later, they told me like, hey, you're going to final round. So you'll do that at 3 p.m. So then at 3 p.m., I interviewed for 3 hours and then was done at 6 p.m. And at 6:30, they had given me a call for an offer. And I think there's maybe another question about kind of timeline on the offer, but kind of had a day or so to think about it and ended up accepting the offer after that. So was a little bit about my personal PE recruitment process. It was very tailored. I only interviewed with Bain Capital actually. Yeah, maybe a little unique in that regard.
Take it away, Phil.
Yeah, happy to share my experience, which I think is a little nuanced and different from Matt's. One of my first introductions to the world of working in finance was actually through undergrad internships, one with a venture fund and one with a lower middle market private equity firm, where I was just super fascinated by the work. I loved how well-rounded the investment professionals were, and I wanted to become that. So for almost 3 years from my sophomore year in undergrad, I had an idea that private equity was a landing space that I wanted to be in. So unlike Matt, I took the hard finance route. I wanted an investment banking group that would give me the most technical, I guess, toolkit. I knew that a lot of private equity firms value and really expect a strong technical skill set, the one that investment banks train you very well at. And coming into investment banking, I knew that the recruiting process would start quite quickly. It's tough to predict when a lot of the private equity firms will recruit an on-cycle on a given year, but a safe bet would be to assume in the fall of your first year immediately out of undergrad. So this is within the first few months of starting your jobs. When the time does come for on-cycle recruiting to start, where headhunters reach out to you, schedule coffee chats in advance, and then call you the night before interviews begin. You have a few months to do what I would describe as your own homework. When the time for performances come, the time for preparation is sort of past. And that sounds a little bit scary, but I find that private equity professionals are generally as open and willing to chat as any investment banking or consulting professional. And I know maybe that's an overgeneralization, but if you approach it, in a sound way with a nice email, generally speaking, you can jump on the phone or chat with them for 15 minutes. They'll tell you about the culture, the strategy of the firm. And I think, from the outside in, if you're an undergrad or you're just thinking about the industry, it feels like, man, how do I differentiate between firms and strategies? But once you're, really digging into it and having coffee chats, all the firms start to separate. You see the differences in culture and in strategy. You realize the difference between a Carlyle and a New Mountain and a lower middle market or middle market firm. And there's so many differences in the job role. Some firms, be it growth-oriented firms, Summit, TA, require business development. You're on the phone a lot. Other firms, my experience was entire execution. Anyhow, New Mountain fit the profile I was looking for. Upper middle market. I was working with savvy management teams and larger businesses that weren't subscale. I wanted to work with really great businesses as well, and I knew New Mountain was willing to pay for A+ businesses. Anyhow, all that to say, that was all in advance, developing that idea before on-cycle recruiting kicked off. One Saturday night, I think it was the Saturday night before Halloween, a headhunter called me at 10 p.m. and then 5 minutes later, 4 other headhunters tried to call, and they all tried to tell me what firms were open to interviewing the following day. New Mountain was offered to me to interview at 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I was living in New York, so it was a little bit easier for me. Those who didn't live there, I can only imagine how tough or tricky it would have been. But interviewed from 6:30 a.m. to about 4 p.m. at New Mountain. Never had the chance to go to another firm, but it was an exploding offer at the end of the day. So that sort of sets the stage for the high stakes nature of it. Those interviews involved, a lot of fit-based paper LBO, a case study that took an hour or two, and then a lot of fit and behavioral interviews. So it's quite tricky because you're deciding to accept a job or not, sometimes 1.5 years to 2 years before starting it. But that's where having done preparation and a lot of, diligent work and thought beforehand pays off.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. All right, Asha, take us home.
Yeah, I will round it off. So again, my experience was totally different from either Matt or Philip because I obviously decided to do it post business school. So I resisted it during my entire 4 years of banking, taking any interview, then any calls from any headhunters. I just didn't ever want to do PE. And then when I moved to business school and I started figuring out, okay, what else I might want to do, I just felt that private equity might actually be the best place in terms of my skills and my interest in technology. So I applied specifically for tech PE and went through the campus recruiting at Harvard, which was mostly funds kind of reaching out to you and asking and inviting you to interview. Apex was one of the funds that reached out, and it really appeals to me because like I mentioned, I'm from London and it has both a New York and a London office. And I wanted to be at a large cap fund that had a dedicated tech team. So interviewed for Apex, they took me through 12 rounds of interviews over the course of about 4 months, which were everything from kind of, your case study rounds and then multiple technical and behavioral round interviews before I got my offer to start in a post-MBA role. My experience on the associate on-cycle recruiting has been on the other side. So last year, we were the fund that unfortunately kicked off the entire on-cycle recruiting process and were hated for it. But essentially, once you decide to kind of kick off, I've interviewed a ton of associates and you kind of do it all overnight. You start at kind of 7 p.m. and you you're still interviewing at 5 a.m. and you're just trying to find the best and the brightest students you can kind of get. And as Madam Phillips said, it often happens before you've learned all that much in banking. So we're trying to figure out who knows the most out of everybody we talk to, and who might be the best fit for our fund. And it's a combination of figuring out who's really excited about what we're offering, but also whose skill set and matches the most with our team and how we approach the world of investing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wow. I'm feeling a little stressed myself just hearing all of this, but I'm amazed that each of you have been through it. And obviously it goes quickly and people land really amazing jobs. So I appreciate each of you giving clarity and visibility into what may seem like a very daunting process that these very successful folks have made it out of. And each of you on this call can make it out of as well. So I think we touched a good amount on this. Philip and Matt kind of spoke to their experience as well as Asha. But Philip, I want to ask, is there anything like that we didn't cover in terms of how to decide which firms to engage with? I know you were working specifically with a headhunter, so obviously they kind of knew going into it who you might be interested in, but what did that indication process look like? Were you doing a ton of research on your own end and then letting the headhunter know? How did you know how to selective to be versus casting a wide net? And if there's anything we didn't cover in the first question that you want to leave the audience with today.
Yeah. And Erica, thanks for raising the point that it feels stressful. I remember being so stressed out, as I was doing coffee chats with headhunters. The unique part about private equity recruiting is that most firms are only trying to fill a very few select spots. And that doesn't mean that there are a few select spots in total. It just means that each firm has a few. And so you can't be so wed to one particular firm, so emotionally connected that if that one doesn't work out, all is lost, because it really isn't. There's so many great opportunities in the market. That said, it's helpful to headhunters to give them some guardrails for what you're interested in. If you simply say, I'd love to be in private equity, they're going to roll their eyes a little bit. If you say, I'd love to be in private equity in New York, they might still roll their eyes a little bit. But if you say, I'd love to be in San Francisco because that's close to family, based on my experience in consulting or investment banking, I'd love to pair my experience in technology and into an investing role. And while I think venture capital is really fun, I'd love to be in late stage buyout because it affords me the opportunity to work with established companies in driving new products and strategies. So the more you can steer the headhunter to a type of fund, and you can give a few examples. I remember saying, I'm really excited about firms such as Newman.
Your audio, I think, cut. Uh-oh. I can't hear you. Uh-oh.
If you can't,
Try now.
can you hear me now?
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Sorry. My only recommendation was provide guardrails. Provide a few specifics and a few open-ended options to your headhunters that will help them immensely.
Awesome. Okay, let's dive to the next thing. What specific skills and qualities does your firm value the most in potential hires for analyst and associate positions? Asha, I'm going to pass this one to you because it sounds like you were heavily involved in recruiting later on in your journey, probably as a senior associate, and would love to hear kind of how you thought through, okay, we're going to start recruiting. What is it that you were looking for in candidates?
Yep, I'm happy to start. So we hired both, firstly, for analyst and associate roles. So analyst roles were those coming straight from undergrad with no previous full-time work experience. And associates were usually after 2 years of banking, but we would start interviewing them 2 years in advance. So we would interview them at the point at which they're starting off their banking career and give them an offer to start 2 years later. But in terms of specific skills and qualities, it does depend on whether it's analyst and associate roles. So on the analyst side, we were looking for people who were really enthusiastic about learning about investing, learning about technology, because that's what we were focusing on, and were people who we felt would learn very quickly. So, when we were doing, for example, a case study round or a technical interview, and there was something they didn't understand, we wanted to be able to see, okay, you don't know the answer to this, but can you think on your feet and really say, hey, I don't know, but here's how I would think about it. So we were more concerned with understanding your train of thought and figuring out how you considered problems and how you got to a solution, rather than, whether you knew what the LTV to CAC ratio was. So that's what we were focused on. And then on the associate side, and Matt and Phil kind of pointed to this, it was very much about the technicals. Like, you need to be technically pretty strong. You need to know your way around all three financial statements. And you need to be a lot more specific about how would you diligence a company? What are the key metrics you would look for? What is the broader scope of technology investing and technology investing trends that you've been following that you're excited about, to be able to see whether you've done your homework, essentially, and whether you would be someone that we could hire, put into the seat, and on day one you would start adding value. So those are kind of the questions we were trying to answer, and the way we kind of test for those essentially through the initial questions around behavioral and technical interviews, but then most importantly, the case study, which I think is the most critical part of any private equity interview, because that's when we test multiple skills at once, from your technicals to your ability to present and convey your ideas, and also to be able to kind of think on your feet and really learn from the feedback that's being provided to you live. So I'll pause there.
Awesome. Matt, anything you'd add, as you've been at Bain Capital and you've obviously probably been in conversations or seen the next class of folks come in, anything you would add that your firm has specifically been looking at?
Yeah, I think two of the things that I would add that we really look for. The first, I would say with the technicals, it feels like there's more of a kind of baseline level that you need to be able to hit in order to do the job. And I think you're testing to make sure that someone is going to get there. But I think it's really hard to like materially differentiate on like you're better at kind of making the Excel model. I think where we really look for people to differentiate is on what insights you can draw from what the model is telling you. Because in a deal process, everyone's going to get the same data, and we're all going to run the same modeling and do kind of the same type of deal in Excel. And what's going to really differentiate you is from kind of the other firms is what's the so what? What insights are you drawing from that that's going to either make you feel different about this company so that you can kind of look at the business in a different way. So we're really looking for that, you being able to look at a set of data and come back with really interesting conclusions. So it'd be the one thing I would add. And then the second, we're really looking for you to have kind of your own opinions. One of the things I was asked in the interview is like, where are you excited in technology, or what's a business that you're really excited about or that you think is a great business, and why? I think this depends on the firm, but especially if you're at kind of a place doing maybe growth stage, or where you've got a heavy sourcing component, like we do at Tech Opportunities, you're going out and you're finding the companies that are turning into deals. And so it's important that you have an opinion and that you're able to come away and say, I like this business. I want to kind of advocate that we do some work here and push that up the funnel. And so I think in the interview, we even start to look for, that sense of, do you have a viewpoint and an opinion on certain spaces that you can get excited about? So those are two things I would add, but thought Asha really covered it well.
Love it. Thanks so much. And I feel like those both complemented each other perfectly. Let's move on to the next one. Philip, I'm going to pass this one to you. How did you prepare technically? What resources did you leverage? Think about someone who's, maybe a senior in college, or, that summer before they start their banking job, about to apply, season's about to kick off. What are you doing to prepare?
I think there's a lot of ubiquitous resources online that you can leverage. Wall Street Oasis, Wall Street Prep provides a number of free LBOs that you can learn about and download, and they have walkthroughs so that you can master the LBO. I think it's important to work with others, and that's, I guess, why you're all here at Leland, because they have coaching, they have one-on-one mentoring, and sitting down and working with another person. Maybe they're even a peer of yours and they don't know how to model perfectly, but going through prep questions or giving each other a modeling test is the best way for both of you to learn. So leverage online resources, leverage coaches, mentors, and at the end of the day, like there's no replacement for individual effort and putting in individual study to make sure that you personally understand it. All of this technical skills required for private equity, I should add, can be self-taught. I don't think it's necessary to get an advanced degree or to get a master's in finance to learn these skills necessarily. I think you can do a lot more on your own that I think you'd surprise yourself.
Awesome. What did like that month leading up to recruiting season look like for you? Was it doing like a model a day, or like obviously you were kicking off the investment banking job, which was a very busy time. How are you also managing preparing, or like when did you double down on the more like technical prep?
Yeah, you're right on the lack of time available. Investment bankers are notoriously not that busy from like the hours of 9 to 11 a.m. when your day hasn't really started. So I did, practice LBO modeling tests late at night. I would get together with my analyst friends and we would do modeling tests or mock interviews one with another. So, filling in gaps, I don't want to say it, but I admit that I probably did some preparation on weekends. So finding pockets here and there, pushing yourself to do modeling tests or review training materials whenever possible.
Awesome. I'm going to give you this one too, just because we're here. I know you talked earlier about like what you did even in college. Like, I think that was really important that you emphasize, like, you knew you wanted to go into private equity. You were doing internships. So obviously your resume stood out, not just from a banking perspective, but earlier experience as well. Was there anything else you did, coffee chats or networking wise, to help you get ready for the recruiting time?
Yeah. Coffee chats, reaching out through my alumni network, asking for introductions from friends to individuals that they might know. As Asha and Matt highlighted really well, there's so much more than just can you derive the IRR and MOIC of a prospective opportunity. They want to know how you think. They want to know like what makes you you. Like where are you from? What does your background inform them about your character? What about interests that you have? I think this is where private equity is differentiated from investment banking, and that they want to see, all of you. They want to see how well-rounded you are, how you communicate, how you handle stressful situations, how you manage people. And so a lot of those soft skills can be developed as you overcome that stressful first interaction. It's a lot easier to feel comfortable in those interview settings if you've done coffee chats in advance. And sure, not everybody that you reach out to cold is going to result in a coffee chat, but it certainly will result in something. So nothing can replace the valuable learning that you get from asking questions and speaking with professionals in the field.
Awesome. Thanks for saying that.
Erica, sorry,
yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think if just raising a flag for those who might be coming from consulting, I think you have to do a little bit more work on the technical front and be more proactive in finding those resources, because you won't have been tested on any finance technicals going into the job. It's possibly you won't have a finance background at all, which I know can also be the case in investment banking, but also there's not kind of, you don't have an analyst class of people who are going to be kind of outspoken about doing this. A lot of people don't know they want to do this. You might even be kind of a year or two in before you decide you want to do this. And so you will be on the job. And so I found that very difficult to kind of find that time and space to be able to do that. And so that's just a flag that like I think you really need to set aside time. It's possible you maybe have a little bit more time than those investment banking free time to do that. And then the other thing I would say is outside of like the technicals, like I thought through behavioral questions that they were going to ask. So tell me about a time, and wrote down answers to that. And then really thought through like, okay, I had an idea of where I wanted to be, but they're going to ask you like, why this fund, why this type of investing, why why not this other type of investing. And so thinking through those whys and having really compelling answers to what those, like, it's not just all going to be the technicals. I think of my final rounds, 2 of the 4 hours was like only behavioral questions. So yeah, sorry, just wanted to add that in.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. Love how those complemented each other as well. Asha, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know you kind of answered the first part of this. If you want to talk through common mistakes you've seen, and then kind of just segue in, like, as you're helping clients prep, I know you do this full time on Leland these days. Those kind of go hand in hand. If you have anything you want to add there from like a mistakes, avoid these things, and also preparation standpoint, would love to hear.
Yep. I guess on the mistakes point, if I start there, the most common ones I've mostly seen are people just not prepared enough. Like they decided that this might be something fun to try, or they might potentially be interested. But if you are applying for private equity, it's going to take a lot of work. And I think it takes a lot of prep. And you have to be very intentional about it, especially if you're in a busy consulting and banking job where you have limited time. So what I've seen, for example, is people go in unprepared to talk about why they should be in a certain fund or why they are excited about a certain role. I've heard people like mix up names of the companies that they really like in the company's portfolio. So I was interviewing somebody for an associate role, and she said she loved a company we'd invested in, and we hadn't invested in that company. And so I feel like just being diligent about where you're focusing so that you come across really genuine and interested in that firm. I would also say get the basics right. Like you should know what the key items on the income statement are. You should know what the 3-statement model is, and you should know like what you would look for to try to decide whether something is a good investment or not. And then everything else is kind of you going above and beyond. And then the final thing I would say is in the interview process, the one thing that does a great disservice to you as the applicant is when you freak out. Like you make a small mistake, and then, for example, in a paper LBO, and I've seen people just absolutely bomb the rest of the interview because they panic so much about that one mistake. And frankly, what I'm looking for as an interviewer is figuring out how much you know, and we will teach you the rest, right? If you're a good fit and if you're a fast learner and we feel like you really do know most of your technicals super, super well, we will teach you how to be a good investor over time. Like that's why we're hiring you. PE is an apprenticeship model. So I think you should be conscious of that and be confident when you're in the interview. And then I will segue into, I've been working with a few clients now, started coaching 4 years ago. And I feel like what's worked really well is when people have a clear plan on this is what I want to work on. And we can then craft a package together and say, okay, here's what you're good at. Here's what you want to spend more time on. And we can be very directed about the type of funds you're applying to and craft your story and your resume for that fund, just so that it makes you stand out a bit more, because you looks like you've been more intentional and put more thought into it. So I was working with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and she's the only person who's gotten through to the first round, to the case study round over the last month out of everyone that they've interviewed. And I think it was only because she was so kind of set on the type of fund and role she was looking for that we were able to craft a really compelling story for her together for her application. So those would be kind of the main ones as you think about how you're going to spend your next few months leading up to PE recruiting.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We are right at time. We're exactly at the 45-minute mark. This has been incredible. I feel like it went by super fast. One line, rapid fire, Matt, Phil, Asha, quick last feedback you want to leave people with before we wrap up and say our thank yous? Go ahead.
Ooh, one
Matt,
line.
take it away.
Yeah, I think doing your homework. Like there's more to these roles than what it seems, more differences across funds. And so really doing the work and the introspection to kind of decide what is it that you are going to enjoy, what stage, what type of daily life, what type of work-life balance, etc. I think goes a long way, because as you go into on cycle, every firm you decide to interview with is likely deciding not to interview with firms that would have reached out while you're in those interview processes. So kind of gets back to the be selective point, but do a lot of work beforehand to figure out where you think you might want to be.
Phil, all you.
2 quick tips: send thank you emails after every coffee chat or interview, and 2, prepare questions in advance that you can ask your interviewers or the individual you're chatting with.
Awesome. Asha, bring us home.
I was just going to say, plan early. If you think you're interested in private equity and that's what you want to go for, start preparing as soon as you can on your technicals, on your behavioral interviews, so that you're ready at the point at which you do start interviewing.
Thank you so much. Final word, huge round of applause to each of you. Phil, Matt, Asha, you've all been incredible. I wish we had like an hour longer that we could break into these things. Please say thank you in the chat. Asha is offering this exclusive discount to everyone here tonight. So Asha-T-break into PE to get 20% off her packages, and it ends in just a few days. So, or I guess about 2 weeks. Book with her, work with them. Thank you all so much. And with that, thank you again for joining, everyone, and hope to see you at our future events. We would look forward to working with you and would love to help you land that dream PE role. Thanks again and have a lovely evening. Take care.